Hey, what's up, fellas? How you doing, man? Antonelli here. What's going on, guys? So I got a question on YouTube in the comment section that asked me about coaches, minor and major league coaches, and what type of effect they can have on players' careers. At the major leagues and the minor leagues, do coaches kind of just stand hands off, and let the player just kind of do their thing, or not? And so I'll give you my personal experience because I've played at every single level of the minor leagues, and I've played in the major leagues. I've dealt with literally probably 100 different coaches, hitting coaches, fielding coaches, base running coaches. And so let's talk real quick, my experience, what I've seen, and kind of how things have changed, because I talk to a lot of players that are playing in minor league baseball right now. And so I do think some things have changed over the years. So first thing, there's going to be a lot of coaches, a lot, okay? So every team in the minor leagues is going to have a hitting coach, right? And there's a lot of levels of the minor leagues. So you've got a lot of hitting coaches there. You're also going to have a roving hitting coach. So a roving hitting coach is kind of the hitting coach that's in charge of the entire minor league. So he's going to come into town. He basically works his way through all the affiliates. You're going to see him in spring training. You're going to see him in fall instructional league. And then you've got your major league hitting coach. And today there's multiple major league hitting coaches. So some teams have 2 hitting coaches. Some teams they've created these new positions for additional hitting coaches. So bottom line, there's a lot of hitting coaches. And that's probably the biggest thing. And same on the pitching side, okay? So I was never a pitcher, but same thing on the pitching side. You're going to have basically the same type of format that you do on the hitting side. So a lot of coaches. What type of effect can they have? So they can have a huge, huge effect on a player's career. Let me give you a little look into my career, because I've had a lot of hitting coaches. I've had some really good hitting coaches. I've had some hitting coaches that were just, you don't really recognize them or realize they're there. And then you have some hitting coaches that are not very good. So the first thing about hitting coaches is hitting coaches, at least when I played, were a lot of just former players, right? So they were former players that wanted to stick around and coach hitting. They had a passion for coaching hitting. Well, some of them did. Some of them just needed a job and were just kind of there, and they became ball flippers. So they just kind of flip you a ball. They throw you BP. They don't really say much. I've had some of those. You have some coaches that coach everything. They want to coach every little part of your swing. And so I've had a whole bunch of hitting coaches. So let's go back to my first hitting coach, which was Rob Deere. He was the hitting coordinator, okay? So he was the hitting coordinator. I should say not my first hitting coach, but the first hitting coach that I think had a pretty big effect on me. And it was nothing mechanical. It was from an approach standpoint. So hitting coaches are going to talk to you about a bunch of different things. They're going to talk about the mental game. They're going to talk about approach. Some of them will talk about swing mechanics. I think actually probably more coaches, especially when I play, we're going to talk more about the mental side and the approach side. That's the first advice that I got, and it really, really helped me. Rob Deere talked to me about being more aggressive, talked to me about anticipating getting my pitch, and not being afraid to do damage on that pitch. I was always a leadoff hitter. I was very passive. I was probably the most passive hitter you've ever seen. And so I didn't swing at anything. And that served me pretty well to get to professional baseball and get drafted high, because I was a really big on-base percentage guy. But when I got to short season A-ball, I hit no home runs. And a lot of that was because I didn't want to swing the bat. I walked and I walked and I walked. And in order to hit for some power, you've got to be somewhat aggressive to your pitch. You have to identify pitches that you can hit well and drive, and you've got to swing at those pitches, right? And so he told me to anticipate my pitch. And that's all he said. We didn't work on mechanics or anything. And that next year, I hit the ball really well. Now, was that the only reason? No, but I do think that had an effect on me. And we're talking about the effects that hitting coaches can have. So that was the first thing. And that kind of got me going. My swing was great that next year. And so I took that advice to heart. I actually swung at some first pitches for the first time in my life. I hit a grand slam on a first pitch. I would never do that ever before. And so I hit 21 home runs. Some of that was mechanics, some of that was approach. Okay, so huge effect right there. So as we move forward, I had other coaches throughout my next year. And actually I was doing so well that they really didn't say anything. And they didn't really need to. I mean, I was hitting over 300. I hit 20-something home runs. I was one of the top prospects in the organization and in Major League Baseball. And so they didn't really say much, which was fantastic. Max Venable was actually my hitting coach, and he talked to me all the time. And he said, your swing looks great. He's like, just continue to do what you're doing. And I think that is really needed sometimes. Sometimes coaches just want to coach, right? They're paid to coach, so they just want to coach. And Max was great because he said, as part of being a good coach is understanding when to coach and when not to coach, when to say something and when to shut up. And so Max was really good at that. And there were other coaches in on the Padres and other front office people that wanted to change my swing around, didn't think it was going to work at the major league level. And Max actually told me a few times, he said, just keep doing what you're doing. You look good. Like your swing's locked in. You look good. Don't change, which is great advice, I think. And so moving forward from there, my swing started to break down a little bit. And a lot of times in professional baseball, they wait for you to fail. And they want you to fail because then they can come in and talk to you about fixing things. And that's how I kind of felt it was with the Padres. I started to fail a little bit, and then all of a sudden people jumped in and said, see, I told you were going to fail. I told you that stuff wouldn't work at the big league level or whatever level. And then they start to try to change you. All right. Sometimes the change is needed. Sometimes maybe it isn't. Okay. And so here's the big thing about hitting coaches, how they can affect your career. This is from my perspective. I will say there's plenty of players. Mike Baxter was one example. Mike Baxter in the minor leagues, I remember talking to Mike Baxter. He was an okay hitter, played at Vanderbilt. I say okay, he was a very good hitter, but at the minor league level in Lake Elsinore, he's just an okay hitter. He came back, I think it was the next year, and he was an unbelievable hitter. And he talked to me about some things that he worked on with his hitting coach in the offseason. And all of a sudden, he's driving the ball, he's hitting for a ton of power, and he played in the big leagues for a decent amount of time. There's an example of somebody that got a huge amount of help from a hitting coach, right? And so it goes both ways. What happened to me was, and this is one of the problems in minor league baseball and even major league baseball, is coaches are paid to coach. So once you're starting to fail a little bit, everybody wants to coach you. Everybody wants to tell you something. Everyone has that secret formula, that magic pill to help you hit again. A lot of coaches want to say, I'm the reason this guy got fixed, right? Because I was struggling a little bit. Imagine if you were a hitting coach somewhere and you told me something that worked, and then all of a sudden I went to the big leagues and signed a $100 million contract. You could always say, hey, I'm the one that fixed him. I'm the one that got him $100 million. Not saying every coach does this, but I do think there's some coaches that do that. And so that's what kind of happened. All these coaches start talking about hitting. And there's so many coaches that sometimes it can get confusing. And so I got confused because there's so many coaches, and one coach will tell you one thing and the other coach will tell you another thing, and then this coach will contradict that coach. And so you don't know who to listen to. And as a young player, I always say, you've got to learn your swing. You have to understand your swing. I didn't understand my swing, and so I just kind of did what everybody told me. And before you know it, you have no idea what your swing used to look like, looks like now, how to fix it, how to not fix it. You get really, really confused, okay? So this is a big problem, I think. And this is where, again, it can really affect you. Some players it can affect for the positive, and I had positive coaches in my career, but some affect you in the negative way. And so my swing kind of got messed up, and it wasn't until I met Sean Wooten, who was a teammate of mine and then became a hitting coach, and he had a really positive effect on me. He helped me kind of figure out my swing. He was the one that actually gave me a passion for learning more about swings. And so he helped take me from hitting about 150 in AAA to then hitting over 300, getting called up the last month of the season. And so he had a huge effect talking to me about things I'd never heard before. And again, gave me a passion for teaching hitting. And a lot of the things that I teach today, you can trace back to Sean talking to me about them a long time ago. So huge effect on me. Allowed me to get to the big leagues. I wouldn't have got there without him because I was lost. I was completely lost. I was like a puppy dog wandering off in the woods, and you don't just look for the dog for an hour and give up. You get off here, and you find that dog, if you've ever seen Billy Madison. So then I got to the big leagues, and same kind of thing happened at the big leagues. I got to the big leagues, and Wally Joyner was our hitting coach, and I'm sure he's a great hitting coach, but they tried to change me very quickly and tried to get me to do things that I wasn't really comfortable doing. And one of the things, which brings me to my next point, is that one thing that I noticed, that I didn't feel like coaches were on the same page. I don't feel like there was a lot of communication going on between one hitting coach and the next, from the minor leagues to the major leagues. And so everyone just kind of threw things at the wall and hoped something stuck. And they didn't really know what I worked on in the past. They didn't know what worked for me in the past or what didn't work for me in the past. I just got called up with Sean helping fix my swing, and then all of a sudden I get to the major leagues and they're trying to tell me to do the opposite of what I just learned. Because in their mind they said, well, you really struggled this year. You're right, you only hit like 220 something. But I felt like they didn't understand that I hit 150 for 4 months, and then I hit 300 in the last month. And what was the reason for that hitting 300? It's because I made adjustments, I made changes. So you would probably want to know what changes I made and what I was doing and why I felt comfortable, right? And so my kids are banging on the window right over here over and over again. And so if you hear that, that's what's going on. So sorry, I lost my train of thought there because my son kept banging on the window. I had to tell him to stop. So that's one thing I think coaches could do better. So hopefully this is giving you some insight into the effect that coaches can have. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm blaming hitting coaches, because I had a lot of really, really great hitting coaches. I just want to give you my perspective. And again, a lot of players were helped by their hitting coaches. And I think today's game, I think with the technology, I think hitting coaches from most levels are a little bit more on the same page. I think hitting coaches understand that it can't just be a guessing game. And so you have this technology which can measure players and what their bat speed is and how they're moving their body, and all this stuff. And so coaches can get on the same page more, and it's not just guessing, which I think is really important. And this is just kind of a little bit of a guess of mine, but I have talked to current players that said that hitting has changed when I tell them about my stories. And so I think it's going in a really good direction. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight again into hitting coaches, how they can affect players on the positive and on the negative. If you have questions, leave it in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. We'll talk to you later. If you've enjoyed this video and want to learn more about building the elite swing, check out our new course. We have over 2 hours of content, almost 30 hitting drills. We break down the exact mechanics that you're going to want to implement into your swing. I've put the link in the description if you want to go check it out.